There's 4 phases of retirement, right? Well, there must be. There's so many YouTube videos that say that there are. However, I don't think those 4 phases actually apply to baby boomers. They certainly don't apply to me. I was born in 1947 and I've been retired for over 10 years. And those 4 phases don't apply to me and they don't apply to any of my friends. I want to cover for you what those 4 phases are and then tell you why I don't think they work for baby boomers. The first phase is sometimes called the vacation phase, the honeymoon phase, or the first year, although it can last a lot more or less than the first year. During that time, people enjoy having sometimes no structure and doing what they want, and they're pretty much, like it says, on vacation or feel like it's a honeymoon period, although some people will become very hyperactive during that period of time because they're concerned about not being active enough sometimes, or they don't know what to do with all of their energy. Phase 2 is sometimes called the disenchantment phase or the phase of loss and losses. People suddenly become disenchanted. They're feeling like retirement wasn't all it was cracked up to be in their mind, and they're wondering if it's right for them and what they're going to be doing. There's also losses that they're coming to confront. The loss of the status they had when they were working, the loss of the relationships they had, the goals that kept them motivated, sense of meaning and purpose. Those are all losses that they're suddenly coming to realize. And there's also, because of aging, loss from perhaps death of parents and loved ones, relatives. So phase 2 is a bit of a rough patch. Phase 3, sometimes called the trial and error phase or the reorientation phase, is an effort to break out of the doldrums of phase 2 by trying new things. They may engage in new relationships, new habits, new hobbies, may start doing volunteer work, start a small business, all kinds of things they might try and go down it for weeks, months, or a couple of years, and then ditch those and try something else. So this phase could last quite a while, and it's an attempt to reorientate themselves so that they can restart their retirement. Phase 4, the final phase, is sometimes called reinvent and rewire, reconciliation, or getting into a retirement routine. From all the experimentation from the 3rd phase, they latch onto something that really works for them, and they reinvent themselves and make peace with their retirement. That's the idea of rewiring themselves to find satisfaction, meaning, and purpose in different ways than when they were working. They also reconcile the things that they're going to be able to take care of and those that they are not going to be able to accomplish. All in all, it gets into a routine that supposedly will then carry them to the end, to the very end. There's a real problem with that 4 phases of retirement model. When you take that idea apart, you'll see it's an old idea with a lot of cracks in it. It needs to be revised for retired baby boomers. The idea was suggested during the retirement of the Great Generation, but really took root with the generation that came later, sometimes called the silent generation, the traditionalist, or the radio babies. They were born 1922 to 1945. They were much different than baby boomers are. These folks were characterized as cautious conformists. They sought stability, worked hard, and thrived by not rocking the boat. Now, does that sound to you like whatever philosophy they came up with would be equally applicable to baby boomers? Seems to me boomers are more characterized by actually rocking the boat. We came of age when there was a civil rights movement, feminism, mental patient rights movements, and a great deal of civil unrest with the Vietnam War. And as baby boomers aged, no matter what age we were, there was big social changes occurring for those age groups. When we were growing up, we were more than a generational difference between us and our parents. There was a cultural difference between us and our parents. So why wouldn't it be that as boomers go into retirement, they would reinvent the way retirement is looked at? One of the problems I see with the 4 phases of retirement is that it's very linear. Even though the idea of phases means they could overlap or kind of go back and forth a little bit, basically it's straight through 4 phases. That was probably a good philosophy for the generation that came before baby boomers because they had less change in their lifetime. They tended to live closer to where they were raised. They had fewer partnerships, oftentimes stayed at the same job or only had 1 or 2 job changes. That was not the characteristics of baby boomers, who often traveled further from their home of origin, often had more serial monogamous partners in their lifetime, as well as other more adventuresome lifestyles. And they often switch jobs much more often than the previous generations. So why would it be expected that boomers would follow such a linear progression through retirement? The way I see it, a more apt picture that captures what retirement is like is that spiraling upwards. It conveys several things, one of which, for myself, having been retired for over a decade, I've gone through those 4 phases of retirement at least 3 times, and I'm pretty sure I'm working on my 4th one. And hopefully, like other baby boomers, as we spiral through those 4 phases of retirement, each time we're becoming more authentic, more willing to take risks, braver to try new things. For myself, yes, I'll go through a week, month, or once a year, that vacation phase, but then that always gets boring eventually. Then comes the disillusion thing. Well, what am I going to do next? And then you do trial and error and pick something up. The things I've tried will often last a year, like when I was a chaplain for the hospitals for a year, or maybe 2 or 3 years or 4. At one point, I sold all my stocks and used that money, converted it to rental properties, had a really good time for almost 5 years, watching HGTV and using all that rental money to upgrade the properties to make them better than when I bought them. But eventually, I did not want to continue that, and I sold it all. Having done many other things for a year or 2, I'm now in another phase of making YouTube videos. I think it's important to acknowledge that for many aging adults, the spiral is not going upward, but it's going downward. The high suicide rate among older adults certainly can tell us that, as well as the high addiction rate. And the amount of stress that the human body can handle at 75 is much less than when one is younger. Some people struggle with poverty, so the freedom that we often associate with retirement is not available for many. If you have a different take yourself on the 4 phases of retirement, please leave me a comment. I'd be interested in your perspective. And thank you for watching one of the videos on my OKBoomerfriend channel, where I provide information and insights to assist you with aging and retirement.